Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. I'm going to take you guys to talk to one of the Chief Commander, I'm going to say SAR officers. He's extremely humble. Can you start, brother, by telling us where we're at right now?
We're right now at West Yancey Volunteer Fire Department. It's really been a hub of support for the community. So besides its normal fire duty functions, this station has served as an outreach, a distribution center, a housing for volunteers. They coordinated a lot of the volunteer efforts. They came in, they checked in the early days. There really was a lot of activity and hub happening here.
And is this over here your command center?
Yeah, the Yancey Fire Department was actually covering for several districts, fire districts, because some of the fire stations were actually swept away in the flood. So it was quite hard hit area. And so they've had these maps and they've been creating lists of things that needed to happen in the community, everything from medical runs in the early days, rescues, search and rescues, opening roads. So besides the fire department, which these guys were doing quite a bit, we actually had volunteer teams of tradespeople with machinery, excavators, bulldozers, skid steers, tractors, and they were coming in working sort of like a task force with first responders, search and rescue guys, medical teams, and then these heavy equipment, because if it wasn't for all those combined, we really would not have been able to cut in so quick and get in.
Louis, can you tell the viewers what your role and responsibilities are here?
So I am a retired, I was a career advanced practice paramedic, a rescue, I worked at fire, LE in the early days, but I spent most of my career doing special operations type rescues in several states. I'm currently was one of the search and rescue coordinators here, but I have just been asked, I'm one of two SAR bosses for the region, overseeing a multitude of SAR teams and recovery teams.
And how many teams are you personally managing?
We're currently managing 8 teams right now.
Okay. And what would you say the biggest area of need is for your teams?
Right now, the biggest need that we have right now is a support. When I'm saying support, I'm talking about materials, food, fuel. In order to keep the teams running, it requires funding. We have to bring in assets such as qualified, certified cadaver dogs. We've employed a kind of technology that allows us to fly over with drones and helicopters to scan areas in advance to try and make sure that they can seek into the earth and into debris piles, and they can see signatures that are unique when there's decomposing remains in these piles or in the earth. And it allows us, instead of just taking heavy equipment with a lot of man hours, which is a tremendous burden, to try and sweep large areas, we can go and employ that in the drones and the dogs, these very, very skilled dog teams, and they can find, in let's say an 11-mile stretch, they might only hit once or twice, and then we can bring in surgically with this equipment to just those 2 spots. And what we're really doing is we're racing ahead of DOT, Department of Transportation, because they have a tremendous responsibility to restore infrastructure, roads and bridges and all of that.
And I want to talk about DOT, but first I want to go back to the technology you were talking about. You're actually, and the viewers will know of the team in Tennessee, where that technology and helicopters are going out tomorrow. We're hoping to recover some people that they've been looking for to bring peace to the family, but can you explain, Louis, where is the support coming from? Is it coming from, and you're very humble, you're very experienced, you're a pillar of this community. Where is the help coming from?
The help is really coming from the American people. They're providing support they're providing supplies, they're sending supplies, they're financing this operation. And unfortunately, we've not really seen the typical response that we would see from other agencies in this region. There's some activity going on, but nothing to the scale that, I'm in Florida, we would see preparation for hurricanes. But in my many years, I've not seen widespread destruction to this level. This is probably one of the worst that I've seen in my entire career when you had all the destruction. So by and large, the assistance that we're getting is actually coming from the American people and not typically, you would think of large federal organizations that would do that.
And can you now talk about DOT, and can you talk about how it's a race in essence against DOT because they go in to these areas without searching these debris piles for people, and can you explain the challenges that brings to the community?
Well, I think that DOT, they have an important job to do, and I'll be honest with you, from what I can tell, they've been doing a tremendous job. These DOT workers and the contract teams that come in that are being paid by the Department of Transportation in this state, they have, it may have been slow to get started in the beginning, but they are really doing a tremendous job and they're moving quite quickly. So what our job is obviously not to discourage that, because that infrastructure is important for these communities throughout the northwest part of North Carolina. But what we are doing is we have the ability to stay ahead of them without racing, but we can stay ahead of them so that we can clear areas before they get there. And what's nice about that is it's really a win-win, because now these teams, these workers with all their heavy equipment, and they're moving a lot of earth, a lot of material quickly, is that they can with confidence go in there and know that there's nothing in there. They're not burying over remains of something or someone.
Yes, and but we can say that DOT has supplies, and we can say DOT has financial backing.
That's right.
And so can you just talk about, you don't have that. And so are you do you feel like you could use more help? And can you explain any shortfalls you may be experiencing?
Yeah, we have a lot of shortfalls. We're civilians that are voluntarily doing this work, and so we need support for air assets. So we need fuel, parts. We need aircraft. We need helicopters. We need American certified cadaver dogs. They have to be of the highest level, because there's a lot of decaying mammals out there because this happened largely in wilderness areas. And so we need those kinds of dogs. We have to feed ourselves. We have to have fuel. We have to have the financial backing, and it's coming, but there's so much we need. We do need some personnel, because we do need to expand as we move and make sure that we can cover these areas effectively. We just don't want to skim it. We want to be very thorough when we do it. And so, so there's still a tremendous need right now. And unfortunately, I haven't really had time to look at media reports. But what I'm hearing in the last few days is that there's people all over the country that have no idea of the gravity and the breadth of the destruction here, and how much work still needs to be done. And we're talking about years of work.
Louis, I'll call you a commander, but you said you're a boss. You're highly respected. You're a pillar. There's many polarizing things on social media. We've talked to SAR team members. We talked to other people. There's some really, really polarizing stuff. Can you tell us what you would like people to know that is not being shown on the media?
What I can tell you is that the response from the very beginning of the storm, we actually had, as I mentioned earlier, we had fire departments doing the best they could, but they were so overwhelmed because most of these fire departments were actually victims themselves. They were right in the middle of it. And we've learned working with these disaster prone areas, we know that whoever's in there, it doesn't matter whether they're first responders, officials, or whatever, if they're in it, they're victims just like everybody else. But one of the things that we've noticed is that the volunteers that came from all over the country, we're talking about people with high skill levels, everything from someone who just was a carpenter or they just had a regular white collar or blue collar job and they just felt the need to come and help. And so we had all of that. But unfortunately, when they got here, the carnage and the destruction was so severe that a lot of those workers were here for a short period of time, a few days, a week at the most, and then they left and they didn't come back because of what they experienced. So I think that based on what I'm seeing, the response, and then we had air assets show up. People were bringing their helicopters from all over the country. It was an amazing Herculean effort that occurred, but it was not largely organized. It's kind of like organized chaos. Things got done, but also things did get missed. And so we had to kind of step back, reevaluate, organize a little bit better, go in and find those areas that were missed, make sure that they were taken care of. And so today we feel like we have a very good handle on how we move forward. And having worked with organized teams in the past, I think that now we're better prepared than ever to respond to an emergency or a natural disaster, especially of this gravity. But from what I can tell, this community is broken, and it will take a long time for this part of the state to heal. And that healing goes with everybody. It goes with the locals, the volunteers, the professionals. Everybody who was impacted or was involved in this operation is going to need some help. And so we're working on doing all of that too.
So let's talk about the community now, and let's talk about how you plan on helping the community, what your ideas are. Hopefully get people behind you. And I want to talk to you about that by bringing up, again, because the viewers have donated a considerable amount of love and finances to the SAR team in Tennessee. And Louis, can you tell us how you plan on bringing all of these people together? That there's some teams that they're off fighting the fight. They're not reaching out. They're not asking for money. They're broke. They're barely hanging on. There's mental health issues. Can you explain to the viewers what you plan on doing to bring the community together and to bring the SAR teams, which I would argue is the life force of the community right now?
Well, what is nice is that we do have a lot of people in this community, and it's the same is going to be for Tennessee, that have the ability to pitch in and really make a difference. And so what we want to do is we want outside teams like the search and rescue teams, or there's recovery teams, to just be an extension of those. And so that is my goal and our team's goal, so that we're not there replacing them, we're augmenting them. And so we need to be working together with them because this is their backyard. They know it, they know the people in it, and they know the resources that are here. So when we bring outside ability or can-do attitude, and we bring that perspective to this restoration, and it's really a healing. We can bring certain things that will definitely help the local community, but it's the local community that will do it. One of the other things that are fine, and so for example, a group in Tennessee, maybe we need to reach out to them and we can talk to them and we can give advice or maybe even collaborate and do some support for them. And so I'm more than willing to do that. But one of the things that we know that is part of the healing that has to happen is that the commerce districts all across this state have just taken a hit in one of their most busy seasons that helps sustain them throughout the year. They're now missing that. So besides being ravaged by a horrific disaster that occurred, the flooding and the destruction of the lands, properties, loss of life, all of these things that are horrific, they now are going to get hit again because the economic fallout from this will be devastating. And so we're encouraging everybody throughout the country to come here. There's plenty of places throughout this state that are open for business. They're just as vibrant and available as they always have been. And so anybody or any entity is telling them to stay away and not spend money is really going to cause this place to fall into even a worse situation financially, which is going to retard or even slow or even halt the recovery. With a vibrant economy, along with all of the outside help that they're getting and the robust, because these mountain community folks are amazing, so resilient. They've been through so much. And I can remember landing with a helicopter trying to get a family out. And the first thing the guy tells to me is, he says to me is, hey, how can I help you? What can I get you? And we're here to get him out because his house has been destroyed. So this resilient thing that we see in this mountain community, there's no question that they will come back, but we just need to help them. And America can help these people by coming, enjoying these beautiful mountains, visiting the destination sites that are open and ready for business. And so that's just one small part of this overall plan. And that's kind of, we look at this as a community building opportunity, and that's how we approach it. It's multifaceted.
And Louis, I want to get back to, out-of-state volunteers, but I want to go back in to the SAR teams. And can you, I think, I want to try to present this question in a way, but I think it would just be best just to ask, can you just please explain why at this point in the recovery efforts, now more than ever, it's important to come together, where maybe as before, it's these pillars of the community, they're out there for a week or two, they're doing well, they're highly effective, but we're 6 weeks into this, man. Can you explain why it's so important to come together?
Well, one of the things, the reason why we're working so hard is to work on the missing list, the official missing list. And we know that the official list is pretty accurate. However, we also know that there's a list that has not been composed yet. And it's probably because there's really no criteria or parameters to build a list. So for example, this area is a destination and is a hotbed for people who have a carefree or bohemian lifestyle that love to live on the road. They love going to beautiful places, mountain areas. And so they come here and they may not necessarily have dependents, or someone can say, oh, that our loved one is missing, or our family member or friend is missing. So those people may have been caught up in the storm and may be casualties and may be part of the missing. So we don't really have an accurate number, and perhaps we might not ever have an accurate number. We're cognizant of that, so we're paying attention. But the reason why we're racing so hard is because without a body, without identifying and having a death certificate, it presents another problem that is another thing that will cause some damage to this community. You can't get a life insurance policy. There's not going to be title transfer of property without going through probate courts, which can take a very long time. And so I'm kind of stepping out of my wheelhouse a little bit, but what I can tell you is that without that determination of death, the family doesn't have the closure, they don't have the insurance, they don't have other things that would help support them through this. And so that's kind of like adding insult to injury. So now these families losing property, losing loved ones, and now they're not able to get things that should rightfully be theirs as heirs to these properties and to estates. It creates a whole nother layer of injury that comes to these people. And, that in and of itself is a shame. It's a travesty.
Well, plus you have the DOT that is effective right now that you're racing against, would you say?
Well, we're staying ahead of them for a reason, because if we weren't here to do this and they come in and do their infrastructure improvements and restore things, they could be going over remains, and then those remains would never ever be found. And so, and it's not necessarily the fault of the contractors that are working for DOT, and I don't really know enough about how that process starts. Who's making decisions to do what. All I know is that as boots on the ground, we can see that it's fraught with problems if we don't do this job, if we don't identify and clear these spaces along the damaged areas before these DOTs come in and cover over things, then it's going to be impossible really at that point to try and find any remains that could possibly be linked to creating a death certificate for the loved ones of those who lost them.
And Louis, I want to talk to one of your team members that has he's a 22-year-old champion that he probably has made maybe the biggest impact on me. But before I do, I want to ask you this: why is it so important to you to recover these people?
Well, first of all, the first part of any healing process is to get closure of some level. So in order for us to do that, I feel like it is our moral imperative to don't leave anybody behind. That's why the title of it is Operation Bring Them Home. And so that right there, what's in the name, that's it. If we don't do this, it's going to be very difficult to have closure for this amazing community.
Louis, can you tell us how can people support you and where can they get a hold of you?
They can reach out, Operation Bring Them Home. They can also reach out to Steelcroft Christian Fellowship. It's one of the organizations that is providing the support and for the financial backing for us. And they desperately need financial support from the community. We've done okay so far, but the operation's ongoing. Everybody here, including those folks at Steelcroft Christian Fellowship, they're 100% volunteers. So this church, this fellowship, is in desperate need of, for us to continue this effort, we have to be able to bring in these quality dogs. We have to be able to bring in equipment. And a lot of those are volunteers, but everything costs money because of the fuel, the food, all of the ancillary support equipment. We have to maintain equipment. We have to replenish equipment. And every day when we send all these teams to various locations, because we are moving quickly to stay ahead of the DOT teams, the DOT operation, if we don't have that financial backing, we fall. We have to remove teams out of the field, and then it will cause what we talked about earlier, and we are really trying to prevent that. So the best way to support us, if anyone is listening and cares to understand the process, is that this is far from over, and their support will go directly to the operation. We don't really have administrative costs.
And Louis, I'll have all of your contact information. I'll be sure it will be thoroughly listed in the description of this video. One last question. What are your thoughts on the young man I'm about to talk to?
The young man that you're getting ready to interview is probably a great example of what I consider to be a breath of fresh air, to see that there are young people in this country who have the background, have the maturity, and have the energy to go after things in life that are meaningful, impactful. And this young man represents all of those things.
Junie?
Yes, sir.
Sir, you are probably, I would say, the strongest person I've ever met mentally. Can you tell us how old you are?
I'm 22.
How long have you been working? Here.
Working here the better part, this is week 6.
You were here from day one?
No, sir, not day one, but I got here pretty early on.
Can you talk about how you're able to maintain and appear to, to stay humble and strong? Being, how are you able to do what you're doing? Because I'm not as strong as you, and I think people need to understand what you're going through and how you're dealing with it.
Well, first and foremost, my strength does not come from myself. It comes from the God that I serve, and His strength moves through me in ways that I do not understand or will begin to comprehend. And so yeah, that is how I'm able to maintain and carry on the next day.
It's the only way. Can you tell us about the challenges of working those debris mounds?
So there are many challenges, not the least of which is the toxicity of the environment that we're working in due to chemicals and sewer systems that washed out, as well as different plants. The majority of the challenge lies with the way that these logs and trees are intertwined with one another. They were under such high pressure when this water came through and lodged themselves in such a way that they are, we call it in tree work, we call it loaded logs. You could also call it a widowmaker. It makes it so logs are difficult to cut safely without them splintering in dangerous ways or popping on you in dangerous ways. Not to mention machinery is necessary for about 95% of the work that we're doing.
Can you take us through what it was like maybe the first few days of the recovery?
The first few days were really slow. Slow in terms of picking up on the weight of what it is that we were doing. Things around us were moving quickly, but it was an adjustment. Let's just say it was an adjustment from normal life.
And what has been the biggest surprise for you through this whole event?
The biggest surprise to me is working with like-minded people, many of whom love the Lord, individuals that care about others more than self, and people that genuinely want to come together and put their nose to the grindstone and get stuff done.
Who's made the biggest, great impression over you? Who keeps you motivated? We all, I know we look up to God, right? But do you look up to any human being? And why, if so?
I would say my dad. He instilled in me a drive not only to pursue the Lord, but to pursue things of value, great value, not material and not monetary, but things of value in the kingdom. Value that can't be translated in human terms, but carries on with us. That is something that cannot be taught in a classroom or cannot be taught by a professor.
And you've worked, we've talked briefly, and I've been blown away, but you mentioned to me you've worked with several people. Some of them had to take a break. You stayed. Can you share with us what maybe there's a SAR member that or a volunteer that is struggling? Can you just give them some hope on why they should come back and why it's important for them to carry on?
So there are a lot of great people I've worked with here, and don't get me wrong, I've gone home to take breaks too. But there are many great people that I've worked with that are driven and motivated. Life gets in the way, and I understand that. There are things, responsibilities, children, wives, husbands that need attention and care. But I would give the encouragement in general, saying that this is work that, while it is not paid, it is work that you receive the greatest payment in a joy that can't be understood. And it's difficult to say that given the circumstances, but it is joy. And it's a joy that can't be comprehended unless you know the Lord.
What would you like to see happen next?
What would I like to see happen next? An increase of the fruit that the Lord has already brought to bear, I think would be the best way to say it. We're already working. We're putting our heads together. We have great leaders like Lewis, who you just heard from, that are gathering resources, gathering more intelligence as to what we need to be doing. And I just want to see an increase of that continue.
Is there anything you could maybe possibly say to give someone, there have been people watching a handful of these videos that have wanted to come out to support your efforts physically, doing manual labor. Can you tell them what to expect and what you would like to see them do as far as volunteers coming to physically help?
There's a lot to expect, and there's a lot of curveballs. We're at a point now where recovery efforts are centralized to individuals, where before it was not. I would say expect to get dirty, really dirty. Be willing to learn from people that have great great knowledge in areas that people like me don't, and just be willing to learn and take your first footsteps in this world, holding the hand of someone that has done it for infinitely longer than you or I have.
What's been the most challenging thing for you?
The most challenging thing is I know where the loved ones that I've lost over time are. I know where they have gone. I know that they rest in the arms of our Savior. But these people, and physically to an extent, but these people, they have no place to lay their loved ones to rest. And that is a difficult thing to swallow.
Why is it so important to you to stay here? I mean, I'm gonna say, I know you don't like compliments. You're extremely humble, but why? It doesn't seem like you take breaks. Everyone I'm talking to,
I take breaks.
I mean, I'm talking to, I don't know if they're Navy SEALs, Special Forces. Everyone, looks up to you. Why are you pushing yourself so hard?
When the storm hit and I was back home, seeing it unfold on the news, I sat down with the folks and reminded them of one of my favorite verses, which is Isaiah 6, verse 8.
Can you say it?
And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, "Here I am, Lord, send me." So when the Lord says go, we say where. And He planted me here, and here I've stayed.
We talked to Lewis. You heard what he said. What type of support do you feel like is needed right now? What support do you guys need?
So manpower and people that are willing to come out and do the work that is needed. Monetary support, obviously, but these battles and these trials are not won by throwing money at the problem, and they're not won by breaking backs. They're won in prayer and humble reverence before the plan that is already laid out by the Lord. So people praying, people fighting this battle on their knees. That's how we're going to continue to renew our strength and get things done day by day.
If you agree with the work that they're doing, if you want to support them, if you want to be a part of their cause, if you want to help their community and to overflow their cup, please reach out. All of their information is below, and let's keep helping until the job is done.